Welcome back to the Oso Spurs podcast, off of the back of not one, but two transfers before the midway point of January. I am here with Cy and I'm here with Stuart. Both of you guys, did you think you would ever see the day that this would happen?
No, no, mate. What? Quick off the line? Quick off the line. Although it was 8 days, I think that might have been like stretching the timelines a little bit. And listen, quick stat for you. Who was the last player that we signed in January that made their debut in January?
Signed or loan? Because I think I know the loan.
Who's the loan then? Go on then.
I think I feel like the loan would have to be Jedson Fernandez.
No,
Really?
it's back. It's way back. And do you know what? I'm
Defoe?
looking at my no. I'm looking back and I can't see it in my notes either. So I'm gonna have to look it up again.
It's the South African center back,
But
right?
did he actually play though? I don't think
Or
he
no, he
played
didn't
though.
play. You're
He didn't
right.
play. We signed. He was the earliest signing we've ever done, but he didn't actually ever play every game for us.
It's
I'll tell
such
you what,
a
right?
good piece of trivia that even
I'll
science
leave.
know
I'll
it.
leave you hanging, and I'll come back at the end of the. I'll come back at the end of the pod with the answer
Ooh.
for you.
Now, that's how you get viewer retention. All right, Stuart, what about you? How are you feeling about this transfer window thus far?
Yeah, I'm pleased. I said before the window opened that I didn't think we'd get anyone in for Burnley, and I didn't think we necessarily needed anyone for Burnley. I just wanted to have the signings, especially the centre back for the Man U game, and the fact that we got the centre back plus another player on top. Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, if we had any doubt that our transfer policy and strategy has changed in the last 2 years, I think this is proof of it. And if anyone had any doubt that we're not back in the manager, Ange said he wanted early signings, and we've given him early signings. So yeah, this is a shock, but amazing and a pleasant surprise. What
Yeah,
do
I
you
think
Yeah,
think?
you can
definitely.
definitely tell that our new I think we finally our new recruitment team has kind of finished its final form. We had a really good summer with Gavinini and Paratici, kind of. Um, but you could tell there was, well, I don't want to say you could tell, but it still felt like there was a bit of Levy influence in there, and obviously I could just be making that up from stuff that people were saying on Twitter, but that's just kind of how it felt. But now I feel like he is more or less handed the reins off to Langa and Rob McKenzie and let them do their thing, and he just kind of comes in at the very end to make sure the deal gets across the line, because I think that the Dragison's agent said that Levy was the one who stayed up till like 3 a.m. talking to them and getting them like um to getting the deal over the line with Genoa and Dragazin. So I think once again, I think he deserves some credit for that. And maybe he's not as terrible of an owner as we like to make out.
I think, as long as he's not involved in highlighting which player we should bring, I'm okay with him negotiating the deal. Because if you remember, the Porro deal was the one that Paratici couldn't get over the line, and he had to get Levy in, and Levy managed to get it done.
Yeah.
So, and the thing I love today's Ange's presser, he basically, led us behind the curtain on how it was done. And he was saying that, Lang and the team worked on it, presented it to him about 6 weeks before the window opened,
Yeah.
about which players they wanted to look at. Highlighted basically beginning of December, they wanted to bring in Dragusin, and then spent that next month checking out and doing the due diligence, which is something we all wish we'd done over in Ndombele, of speaking to people around the player, checking him out again, and then moving for him. So, I mean, it sounds like we have a real professional setup in place now, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think the bit about the stuff that gives you confidence around the structure that's behind is exactly that. It's the fact that Ange said, well, straight after the transfer window closed, we've been working on the centre back all the way through. We've been working through a long list of them. We identified Radu as the number one target priority, and we went after him and we got him. And we've been working on it for a long time. It's not like we picked up the phone last Wednesday and said, "Do you fancy it?" there's been a lot of hard work in terms of scouting and conversations, and that made the difference.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that we clearly, I mean, have been in contact with him for a while, and I think that that's kind of one of the main reasons that he chose us over Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Which can we just sit back and appreciate that a player has chosen to come to Tottenham Hotspur, where he will not be a guaranteed starter, over Bayern Munich, where he also won't be a guaranteed starter. So, man, Ange's pull is just incredible. But I think the next question that I wanted to ask you guys is, how much do we dislike Dragusin's agent?
Yeah.
I love him. I think he's good value. He's just for the naivety factor, he coming out with that statement. I think he's fantastic. Yeah. Why didn't we sign for Bayern? Well, you were sort of in the driving seat for a lot of this, the two of you. I'm guessing that you didn't have as much influence as you thought you did, But yeah, I don't hate him at all. I think it's quite amusing.
Well, I remember saying in the group WhatsApp chat about a week ago that I wish he'd shut up, because it was clear that he was, although everyone was saying it was a done deal, he was clearly trying to get Napoli in, Milan in, Bayern in.
Yeah.
And after you're signing a new contract, you're already touting him off to Real Madrid 2 or 3 years later. I'm like, dude, just shut up. But yeah, I mean, luckily, unlike a lot of other players, apparently Dragusin's got a mind of his own, and once he gives his word, he overrules his agent, which I think we've all got to give him credit for as well.
Yeah, and I think that plays really well into the kind of character that Ange wants to have in this team, which is the same thing that we've seen with Vicario, that same thing we've seen with Van de Ven, Madison. We've spoken ad nauseum, and so many people have talked, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but he's talked about how at this level, all the players are more or less the same. Not the same, but close enough that sometimes the attitude and the personality that a player can have will outweigh the raw talent that a player has. And I think that Dragusin is another example of a player who clearly, from the stuff that's happened so far this transfer saga, has the character that will fit in well with a team like ours.
The one thing I will say is, I wonder, and I should actually have reached out to a few of my Juve supporting friends, but I wonder how much they're looking at us and Paratici and thinking, damn, we brought in 4 great players, and we've allowed 2 of them to go out on loan and get bought by the teams that we sent them out on loan to, and then sold off another 2 because we didn't think they were good enough. And now we're seeing them flying, and we have struggled to win anything since.
Yeah, I saw a article from some garbage source that said that Juve was regretting selling Dragusin already, but I don't know. That's probably just someone wish casting. But I'll believe it anyway because it sounds funny.
Yeah, definitely. But then we can look back at then you're going to get thrown at us the amount of players that have gone on and won silverware since the last time we won silverware, isn't it?
But there's a difference between going on and winning silverware, because no one's actually won silverware joining us yet. And there's another thing of seeing them actually improve and do well.
Yeah.
Whereas, how many of our players have left us and gone on to bigger and better things? They've won silverware in minor leagues.
Yeah, that is true. I guess since we're already talking about Dragusin, we can go ahead and talk a little bit about the kind of player that he is. I spent my evening yesterday watching the Bologna versus Genoa game because I wanted to see at least one full 90 of him before coming on and talking about the kind of player that he is. So I guess I will take the lead on this, and I think that realistically, if you've seen any of the scouting reports on Twitter or whatever, they're all saying the same thing, and they're all mostly right. He is a physical freak of nature. He very much is a front foot defender, but isn't necessarily one that's going to have as many fouls as someone like Romero, which could be a welcome change. So for example, if Romero has a yellow card suspension or a red card or whatever, he's someone that we can come in and not be too worried about coming in and getting a red card a game later. which would then leave us with Emerson at the back again, probably. So that is something that is encouraging to see. His passing range isn't the greatest, but it's not as terrible as looking at like FBref would suggest. I think that he's a part of a team where their goal is defending by making sure the ball is as far away from their goal as possible at all times. So it's one pass. It's like you pass it to the center back. Center back will probably pass it back to the goalie, and the goalie will hoof it up to either one of the wingers or the forward, and they pray from there. And that's kind of how they played. And even in the game that I watched, he had a couple times where he had a little bit more time on the ball where he was able to turn forward, and he played some line breaking passes. So he's definitely not someone who's like hopeless on the ball. So I think that that's not necessarily something we need to be worried about as much. He's not as good on the ball as maybe like Romero is, but I don't think that that's necessarily something that we should be expecting from a 21-year-old.
Yeah, I think I said in the group WhatsApp chat, I've seen him play a few times, and it's hard to judge him considering that Genoa play completely different styles the way we play. It's a lower end side who are always under the cosh. They don't have the midfielders to play it into, same movement off the ball, etc. So it's hard to see how easily he'll hit the ground running with us. But you can see he has, I think, the basic foundation to do well. And then clearly I'm putting all my faith in Ange and our data analysis team that they've done the underlining, research to understand that he does fit in with the system. Because, as DJ was saying before, they did the research, they decided he's our number one target. If they've done that after the amount of, 4 months looking into all of, European and probably Asian competitions, he must tick the boxes that Ange wants. And Ange just made it very clear he's not going to allow anyone in that he doesn't sign off on completely. So it's good enough for me.
Yeah, I think I probably know as much as anybody else that's seen the show reels on YouTube. If I'm honest, depends who's cut them together as to what show reel you see. But he looks quick, he looks strong. I think he might take a little bit of time to get used to the subtleties of the Premier League. I think you might see he might give away quite a few fouls to start with before he learns the subtleties. But he looks like an immense player. He looks extremely strong.
Yeah, and the Genoa do play in a back three, which I guess could be cause for concern. But he does play in a back four for Romania. I haven't caught one of his games for Romania because I don't really watch European international football like that. But that may be something that if I'm bored before the United game, I'll tune into and see if I can see anything different about his game. Only thing I've seen from Romania is that one clip where he's like bigging up the guy from Israel. Yeah. And that is the extent of his that is the extent of my knowledge on his international game. All right, so enough about Dragozin. Let's talk about the guy that people probably know a bit more about. Not necessarily a good thing, but people definitely know him, and that is Timo Werner. This transfer came out of literally nowhere, and it happened very, very quickly, which which was exciting. I very much like when a transfer is none of the stuff with Dragons, none of the will he, won't he. It was just Spurs have identified their target, Spurs have signed their target, and then it takes like a week for us to announce him because it's Tottenham. But I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about Timo. Do you think his time at Chelsea is something that he will like? Will inform how he'll play here? Do you think that he'll be different under a different manager, a different system? What are your overall thoughts and opinions on this side?
So I think the thing that he comes with different expectations makes a difference this time, without a shadow of doubt. I think when Chelsea signed him the first time, they thought that they were signing the next elite striker in Europe, and he was coming over to be that the Drogba sort of the prodigal son coming home type thing. I think we're getting a different player. I think Ange said that he thinks he's a different player both on the pitch and off the pitch. I think what Ange is buying him for is not for 25, 30 goals a season, because we know we're not going to get that, and we're going into that with our eyes open. I think what he's buying is all the other stuff that he does around. And when you look at him, he's got blistering pace. He'll press all day long, and he can. Listen, he does score goals. I mean, in his time at Chelsea, he had a goal involvement almost one game in two, so that's not that bad a return. And he's got a better goal scoring ratio in Europe than Son has, if you look at the goals per game. So he's not as bad a finisher as people are making out. I don't think he's as subtle a finisher as someone like Son that's got a really wide repertoire of finishes. I think if he's through on, his finishes are fairly similar. They're hard, low, or they're tap-ins. But that's fine if he's coming in wide from the wing and stretching the game. And I think what you'll see is, I think we'll get onto the lineup later, but I think he starts on Sunday. And I think he will cause massive problems down that left-hand side for Man United, because they've got they haven't got a lot of pace in that back line at the moment, and I think that he'll exploit it. So I think he does a lot more for the team than just goal scoring, but I think he gives us an additional goal threat. And I think the prime example of that, and it's been touted around a couple of times on different shows and podcasts, is the goal that Kai Havertz scored in the Champions League final. Werner made that goal, but with his run, he opened up the space for him. And if you could get an assist for a run off the ball, he should have got an assist for it. So I think I think overall he improves the first 11, and it allows Ange then to think about how he utilises that front three. And he alluded to, I don't know if it's this press conference or one previously, that probably Johnson started more games and been more involved than was ever the plan at the start of the season. You wouldn't have thought he'd be starting 11 games on the bounce, but he has. So that's that gives a little bit more subtlety and rotation to the front line, I think.
If I remember right, and this is really showing my age, but I'm pretty sure we were linked to him when he was at Stuttgart before he even moved to Leipzig.
Right.
So it's a player who's been on our radar for a long time. And I think as well, obviously, as you said, Si, one goal involvement in 2 games isn't bad. Obviously, we remember the highlight misses. But I think as well as many players, confidence is a big thing. And once you started feeling the pressure, it started getting worse and kind of snowballed from there. And I think the one thing Ange is guaranteed to give you is the confidence to go out there without any pressure, because Ange is going to take the pressure. And that's one thing that I loved from today's presser, was someone was saying, after these 2 windows, do you feel like it's becoming more your team? And he said, no, mate, it's been my team since day one. I'm taking responsibility for the team. And that's what I love about Ange. And all the players will feel that. And I'm sure Werner is going to have that, arm around the shoulders, make him feel good, make him feel important. And knowing that he's going to get a run of games because we're missing players is going to give him that confidence as well to hit the ground running. So I think, if he can do well, if he can get a goal in maybe the first couple of games, who knows? Maybe we do look at keeping him because he's got the pace. He's got something that the others don't have. Hopefully he'll get more game time than Juma ever got given a chance under Conte and the rest of it. And then who knows? Who knows? I mean, I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised. And I think also we need to remember that Chelsea is a graveyard for strikers. So let's not judge Werner, on that.
Yeah, definitely.
As was said in the chat, I think we can kind of remove the 4 strikers from that last statement. You can just call it a graveyard at this point. But yeah, I am super excited for this signing because it's really low risk, and I don't necessarily want to say it's super high reward, but it's reward enough that I think that he will be used almost exclusively as a left winger. Because I think he offers something different than Richarlison, and I think that this probably will eventually lead to more rotation between the 3 of Son, Richarlison, and Werner, where Son will either start as a striker and Werner will start, or Son will start as a winger and Richarlison will start, depending on what we need. Like if we need some more aerial presence, we'll start Richarlison and we'll have Son out wide. But if we're playing against a higher line and we just need that pace on both sides, we'll start Son up top and then we'll have Werner out wide, and then they'll probably switch interchangeably through the match. But we've seen it already with Brennan Johnson, where he hasn't necessarily looked the greatest in games, but he still has 4 assists, and like a decent chunk of them are just him just blistering past his man and then cutting the ball back in, and then having Richarlison in the middle for a tap in. Or not necessarily tap in. They're still difficult finishes, but like an easier finish than like a striker would be necessarily used to.
Yeah.
I think Werner offers exactly the same thing on the other side. Just being able to beat. I mean, we that's like his biggest attribute is his pace. I don't think anyone's like got any like misconceptions that he's some sort of like incredible dribbler, or like world class goal scorer. But
Yeah.
he is fast, and when you are fast and you can just run by your man, then that leaves so much space behind for you to exploit, especially when our other two attackers are also very fast.
Yeah.
He won't necessarily have to wait for like a Kane. Just kidding. But like he won't necessarily have to wait for someone like a Llorente, for example, to make his way up the pitch eventually. He'll have Son and Johnson like flooding into the box right behind him, and he'll just be able to. So I'm really excited to see how a front three with that much pace works out.
I think
Sorry, Stu, go.
No, I was going to say, I thought it was an interesting comment that Johnson came out recently about hitting in those early crosses without looking up. So I think it's also important that we need to remember that the wingers are getting strict instructions from Ange on how to hit those forward passes, and Ange is putting a lot of pressure and responsibility on the ones in the middle to make the right runs and then to anticipate those crosses. And I think that's the same thing he's going to be telling Werner. I just think it'd be interesting to see what happens when Solomon's back and how, then what is Werner's role on the left? Because obviously Werner is on loan, Solomon isn't. And they are very different players. As you said, DJ, Werner's all about the pace, but I think Solomon's more about the trickery. So maybe then it is a case of horses for courses. So I think Ange is getting really a proper squad to deal with different problems that we're going to be facing.
Yeah, and I think that pace. Now that we're so if you play, I can see it being really exciting if you play Johnson on the right and Werner on the left. Games where there is a little bit of space in behind the fullbacks. And you listen to any fullback talk, and they hate pace. They don't like defending on the turn. They don't like getting after wingers, and it puts them in two minds as well. Which, if you think about it, that opens up space for the inverted fullbacks cutting inside as well, because the fullback doesn't know where to go. Does he go and cover the inverting fullback, or does he go with the winger? Well, go with the winger, you leave space in the middle. Go with the fullback, and you leave space in the channel. So it creates chaos in that part of the park as well. So the challenge you've got is that speed gets negated when you come up against teams that sit with a low block that defend the width of the box and the edge of the box. Then you need something a little bit different, and maybe that's where some of the Kulu stuff comes in. And Son's very good at tricking past players rather than using pace to go past on the wing. So to your point there, Stu, I think it's just another tool in the toolbox. It gives him another option in that front third. And I think that's where he's said numerous times, we're miles away from where he wants us to be in that front third. And I think listening to The Athletic the other week, Tim Spears was talking on there and saying that Johnson had a really good game the other week. In fact, he had a really good game against Burnley. But he's looking a bit formulaic in terms of he's doing exactly what Ange is asking him to do, and he will grow into that role as he gets more comfortable. So once he's got naturally doing the things that Ange wants him to do, he can then start to express himself a little bit more. But he's got to get the basics of Ange's system right first in order to do that. And I think and we'll get on to what the perfect lineup is a little bit later when we've got everyone fit. I think that was a question in the group. That becomes difficult because I'm not sure there is a perfect lineup.
I was going to say, this is a great segue to our viewer question segment. So we will start with a question from Arnie, which is, all fit, no suspensions, what is our first 11? So I will go ahead and name the obvious part, which I think is the defense and back line. I think that the goalie and back line, Vicario will start, obviously, and it'll be Porro, it'll be Romero, it'll be Van de Ven, and it'll be Udogie. I don't think there are any arguments about that at the moment. I am more than happy to be proven wrong. I'm more than happy for Dragusin to come in and immediately be the best center back in the Prem, but I don't think that will necessarily happen. I think he'll probably take some time to bed in, just like everyone else does.
No Davies above Van de Ven at left back?
I think again in the presser today, what Ange said was it's not about who's going to be the first choice too. It's more around it gives options there in terms of not having to play those two players every single game. And I think from what I read about Dragoson as well is that he can play with both feet, so he could play either side. So that he's going to get time and he's going to get rotation. But yeah, I'm fully aligned with that back line, Deej.
All right, now is where it gets difficult. The midfield. I think that there are two more or less nailed on spots. And I think the third is kind of getting close to being nailed on based on this third person's performance this season. But I will let you guys deliberate on that. I think Bentancur starts. I think Madison starts. I think those are my two absolute locks.
Yeah.
And I think that my third player that I would start, I didn't think I'd be saying this at the start of the season, but Pap Sarr has just been absolutely incredible. And I don't want him to not start.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough one. I think the Basuma before the red card was nailed on starter. So it would have been Basuma, Bentancur, Madison. The Basuma since, I agree with you. I would go Bentancur, Sarr, Madison. But it's nice to have those difficulties of having really great options rather than is it going to be Højbjerg and Skip?
Yeah. Yeah, so then does that then still leave us a bit light in that midfield, though, in terms of rotation options? If you've only got one real rotation option, which is Basuma, does it still leave us a little bit light in there? Do we still need another attacking midfielder, another number 8 in there?
I think we're more than fine there because we'll have Lo Celso. Remember, this is all fit. So we'll have Lo Celso there. We'll also have Kulusevski able to slot in as a midfielder if need be. I think that at the end of the day, I think that a first 11 with the kind of squad that we have isn't necessarily something that we'll be seeing as often as we did under a manager like Conte, where no matter what happened, the same players started. I think that because of the different profiles we have in the midfield, I think that I won't say that this will happen. Maybe we will just have the same 11 play every game, but I think that it'll be more that we will take it in a game-by-game basis, where if we need someone with Basuma's talents, we'll start Basuma. And if we need move Bentancur over to the secondary 8 position. And if we need someone with Pap Sarr's specific talents, then we'll play him and we'll keep Bentancur as a 6 because I think that he can play either of those positions.
What do you think his strongest one is, Deej?
I think I just need to see him play a bit more. I think that in my mind, it's probably the 6, but that's just because I think Pap Sarr plays that 8 so well. So I don't know if that's necessarily because Basuma's or Bentancur's better. But I think that his skill set is just so out of this world that he can basically play any of those positions so well.
Yeah, and he almost swaps between a 6 and an 8 at times in the game as well. And I think we've got that a little bit with Sarr and Bentancur. They can almost alternate that 6 and 8 within the game, depending on what's required. Because Bentancur is a lovely passer of the ball, but he progresses the ball at feet very well as well.
Yeah, I mean, he knows how to get forward. He can also do forward runs as well. So he's got everything in his locker. I think, going back to your question, Si, about, do we need to add? I think for the rest of the season, perhaps we don't. As DJ said, bearing in mind everyone's fit. I think the issues that we will have to address in the summer are, I think Højbjerg and probably Skip are not good enough for Ange Bol, and GLC, as much as I like him, he is not able to stay fit. And I think that's a real problem that we need to think to move him on, sad as it is.
Yeah, I think that I don't necessarily, I mean, I know people want us to go and spend 50 million on Gallagher, but I think that our money would be better spent buying some people who can flourish under, like, maybe not start every game, but like be game changers off the bench. They're maybe a little bit younger that we can, and also preferably at least one homegrown because we're kind of constantly up against that.
I think if we're going to spend 50 million, I'd rather spend 2 times 25 million on a young, possibly homegrown, as you said, DJ, and a midfielder, and a backup to Udogie at left back.
Yes, that is something that we need to keep an eye on. All right.
Yeah.
So to answer your question about the midfield, I don't know. So we will now go to our attacking options, and I think that this is probably going to be the one where we will have, I want to say, the most split opinion. Because I know if Jim were here, I know Jim would say it would be Johnson, Son, and whoever on the left. But I think that for me at least, I think I'd have Kulusevski on the right still. I just think that he's too good of a player to not play. I would have Son in the middle, and I don't want to say I'd have Werner on the left, but I think I might I'd either have Werner on the left or I'd have Son on the left and Richarlison in the middle. I'm gonna cop out. I'm gonna say that it's a game by game basis thing, which kind of goes to my point again about us not necessarily having a first 11, but we'll have an 11 based on our opponent.
Yeah, I think the key position there is the right hand side, and I think it depends. It's horses for courses. It is going to be a game by game basis about what's required for that particular game. In a tight game where you've got the low block and it's difficult to get space and manoeuvre, I think Kulu there all day long. Where there's space, you might want to exploit the pace and bring Kulusevski on maybe a little bit later, or if Maddison goes off sort of like on the 70-minute mark, which it looks like 70 minutes is a time where Ange likes to change things up a bit. He likes the players to give everything for as long as they can, and if that's 70 minutes, that's fine. You could start Kulu on the right, drop him into the middle, bring on Johnson on the right for pace towards the end of the game. But I think it's definitely horses for courses, because there's times where you're going to want sort of like the aerial threat of Richarlison up front rather than the breaking runs of Son. And to your point there, DJ, I agree with you 100%. I think that's where you can probably see the most rotation and the most change. But I don't think he goes and gets Werner. And then there's statements coming out from Leipzig as well that they agreed to the loan because he's been, whether it's guaranteed or had a reassurance of game time. I think you'll see Werner almost as him and Son swapping middle and left. I'm still not convinced about Richie. I still think he's my jury's still out. He's done really well in the last few games, but I think he needs to do a little bit more for me to show me that he's 60 million quid's worth.
Yeah, I think again it's definitely horses for courses. I think based on this season, I think Kulu gets the right wing spot. I think long term, again, Johnson I think's got a higher ceiling, but Kulu offers that sacrifice and tracking back for the team, which Johnson doesn't do. I think Son is deadlier. I mean, I think it's statistically proven deadlier than Richarlison in the middle. But again, it depends on what kind of defense we're up against. If it's as DJ said, or someone with an aerial threat, Son's not going to give it to you. So then you play him on the left. And I am a huge fan of Solomon. I think he's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve. So again, the sides that have the low block, I would definitely play Solomon on the left once he's back, because I think he's got the trickery to get past. Because Werner doesn't have that trickery to break a defense down.
No, he's raw power, raw speed, isn't he? Yeah. The other thing that Kulu gives you when you're under pressure as well, he's a magnificent outball.
Yeah.
He
holds the ball up so well. He just holds it up so well on that right-hand side. And there's times where he's got two players around him and you wonder how he's going to move, and he's tight on the touchline. Next thing you know, they're looking at each other and he's disappearing down the line. I think they look for that outball on the right-hand side when we're under pressure a lot.
And to be fair, I think he's the only one who's able to do it, because Son can't, Richie can't.
Richie can't trap a bag of cement half the time.
Exactly.
He's definitely our best outball by a significant margin. To answer your question, Arnie, we don't know. That was a very long way of saying, who knows, man.
But at least we agree we don't know.
What we're really saying is what Ange has been given lots of different options and solutions.
Of course.
There you go.
We have
In
a
Ange we
best
trust.
15, 16. That's
Yeah,
what we
man.
have.
Exactly.
All right. So now our next question is from Rick from Canberra, and he asks that he would be interested to hear from Spurs fans of long-standing, so maybe not me as much, but if they see the impact
old
of
fogies.
Ange and co. as a genuine and enduring cultural change for the club, owners, management, and football operations, as well as the coaching staff and squad. I will answer first because my answer probably means the least because I am obviously haven't been supporting for as long as you guys. But even because my first experience with Tottenham was essentially the beginning of the Pochettino era, and that kind of that there was a good feeling at the time. We had a lot of young talent. We had chances to win things that we didn't capitalize on. But I don't think that I've ever felt as good about the long-term direction of the club as I do right now. And that may be because we just haven't had the time for other like um destabilizing factors to come into the club. Like for example with Poch, it was always, "Oh, Man United, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And that kind of always put a damper on things. But yeah, I think that this plus our restructuring of our recruitment, I think that's just huge because that was always the weak part under Pochettino was our transfers, man. Clinton and GA, man, what were we doing? Vincent Janssen, we were really, I don't know what we were thinking with some of the P players that we brought in, and I think that our recruitment has just been so much better, even in just like the 1.5 really windows that we've had under Ange, and I think that's one of the main differences that I've noticed. So I will pass it off to the experts. We'll start with Stu this time.
Recruitment side. He brought in the data analysts. He brought on the entire philosophy of the club. I mean, he's got Levy not just backing him, but making early transfers in not just summer windows, but even January windows. We're spending 200 million net this season already after 150 million last. I mean, he's got everyone believing. He's got the fans. I mean, let's face it. We brought in a relatively unknown Australian manager who, again, let's not forget, on Twitter, Spurs Twitter had a no to Ange thing going when he was rumored to be joining us. And after the first friendly game out in Asia or Australia, everyone was already bought in. And I think that just shows you the power of the man because he's got players to buy into him. He's got the fans to buy into him. He's got management to buy into him. Anytime he speaks to a player, he convinces them to sign for us rather than Newcastle and their money, Bayern and their history. Ange is amazing. The only thing that worries me was today he was asked a question about,
how long are you going to be here for?
You move on every few years. Do you finally see yourself staying somewhere? And he didn't say, I'd love to stay here for a long time, but you never know in football. His answer was, you never know in football. It's not up to me.
Yeah.
And that worried me, to be honest. It's already 6 months into the project and I was already worried, thinking, no, please don't leave me.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, my first era of watching Tottenham was the Keith Birkinshaw times. Early 80s is when I first started going and seeing the up at the old lane, up the old shelf, standing, and you knew what you were getting. You knew the type of football. You knew the philosophy of the football you were getting back then. But it was so inconsistent. It was unbelievable. We've never been a particularly consistent side in all the years that I've been watching us. The most consistent season I think we had before the few under Poch was the 86-87 season when we got to the cup final, got to the semi-final of the League Cup, and we finished. I think it was finished third in the league. Yeah, so that was a pretty consistent season. But even then, Spurs has been quite a chaotic club. If you look at the times with Sugar and Scholar and Venables and all of that, it's always been something dramatic going on in the background, and it's always felt a little bit disorganized, a little bit, like I said, a little bit chaotic. The Poch thing started pulling that together. You started to get an understanding of just by seeing the football on the pitch, what we were about, how we wanted to play. But even Poch wasn't as articulate, and it might be a language thing, but even Poch wasn't as articulate as Ange in terms of saying, this is who we are, this is how we play, this is our philosophy, this is what we're going to do, mate. You know what I mean? It's like this is the first time I've felt like there's been some significant changes to the organisation of the club. Maybe, Stu, to your point with Paratici coming in and reorganising that and still having a major influence in the consultancy role at the moment from the sounds of it. And the reorganisation of the recruitment in the background, and Ange really saying, you guys get on with it. And, Levy's sounding like he's letting the recruitment team get on with it until it comes to the sharp end of the deal where he's got to get involved to get it over the line, and Ange has to get involved to give have the conversation and give the tick to move it forwards. It feels like there's a structure. It feels like there's a plan. It feels like, that we're looking at players, the right types of players for the right reasons, rather than, you look at some of the other big clubs, and I know that we say we've been in disarray for a while, but you look at like Man United, what's their recruitment policy? Pay big, pay too much, give massive contracts, and get them from Ajax.
Who is
that seems to be
with?
that. Yeah, and you talk about, and this is, coming back to the root of the question about the culture. Yeah, it feels very different, and it feels very different because what's happened is Ange has gone in there and put his markers down very quickly about what he expects and what he wants. And you look up the other end of the country to where we're going on Sunday, and Ten Hag just hasn't done that. You don't know what system they play. You don't know what their philosophy is. You don't know. You don't know what you're going to get from 1 week to the next from them. And he's been in there 18 months. So, and Ange has been in there for 15 games. And and I think that's the difference in the two managers. And even when we've been decimated by injuries, Ange hasn't let that change the philosophy of play. We still go out and we still try and play the same way. And some of the performances we've put in with basically a second string have been absolutely amazing at times.
I think one of the interesting things as well is to compare it to Pochettino. Like a lot of our fan base was demanding that Pochettino be the manager points last summer, and he's gone to Chelsea, and he hasn't been able to put his mark on the team. They have no playing style. It changes from one game to the other. Whereas you look at Ange, same time frame, and he's revolutionized a team that was in disarray, negative. People were saying we were going to take years to get back to top four. And, if it wasn't for, let's be honest, if it wasn't for that Chelsea game where anything that could go wrong did go wrong, injury-wise, suspension-wise, we'd be top of the league right today.
Yep.
No doubt.
Yep. So, another long answer to say yes. This is definitely feels different than past eras. I think I can speak for the entire podcast, including the ones who are not here. As always, quick shout out to Johnny, who was the first who introduced us to the Ange train and made sure we all got on it before it was too late.
Yeah. Before it left the station. Some of us were running along the platform to jump on, but we got on there before it left the station.
Yep. And I am very happy that we have such a knowledgeable member.
Just another thing on the culture piece, and I don't want to get into the the Levy in, Levy out thing, because that's not what we're about. We don't bring that politics in. But there is something going on at the moment with this FFP where we're looking fucking great on that, by the way. Yeah, and other teams are looking over their shoulders. Newcastle, they've got all the money in the world. They can't do anything with it because of FFP. Chelsea are looking at charges. Man City 115. You only need one of them to stick, and they're in big trouble. So actually, maybe we've been doing something right over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a difficult time, and I'm not saying it's all down to Levy, because there's other people in there behind the scenes doing stuff. But I think there's a little bit of credit there. We're not looking over our shoulder thinking about whether we're going to come a cropper on FFP, right? Because we're just not in that envelope.
Yeah, I think this actually transitions well to another question that we had from Will, who asked how we should feel about Daniel Levy. Because, obviously, end of the Conte era, we had a lot of I mean, we had the levy out stuff like basically every single day. You open up Twitter, that's all you see is a sea of purple and gold.
Yeah.
You had the balloons being released at the games. And now we've got a great manager. We've got 250 million spent this season, and we just went toe to toe with Bayern in a transfer battle and won. And so he asks, is it too soon to forgive 23 years of hurt? And I think that what Sai said kind of answers the question. It's that I think that we are all kind of so used to how our standing now that we kind of forget that even like at the beginning of the Pochettino era, we were nowhere near the size. I hate using big club as a thing, but we were nowhere near the size of club
Yeah.
that we are now. We had we obviously had history, but so have other clubs that have, gone circled the drain in recent years, and we've managed to climb our way back from, I don't want to say mid-table mediocrity, but like, upper mid-table,
Oh.
happy to get into Europe every once in a
Well,
while.
let's call it what it was, Deej. It was we were hovering around, 10th to 14th on a regular basis.
Yeah. So we were not the club we are today, and
Right.
after Levy came in, he spent a lot of time making sure that we would have the ability to not just compete in the short term, which some clubs are trying to do and failing, even though they have all the money in the world, as we've mentioned, and set us up for the long term instead. And obviously, that may not have bore fruits immediately. Obviously, there were times that we probably should have extended more than we did. I'm thinking mainly of the summer where we bought nobody. I think that kind of screwed us over for a while, and then of course the
Nelson and
window after
Saha.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's a really interesting question, and thanks for asking it, because I think it's an important thing to remind ourselves of, that we were borderline when we kicked off this podcast, a year ago now, pretty much. We were borderline. We were having lots of discussions about whether it's time for him to go, whether we should be. We weren't really. We weren't yellow. Yeah, we weren't purple and gold, but we were having really open discussions about whether it was time for him to move on, whether if we got a good price for the club and it was the right purchase, should he sell? And we probably agreed that it was probably time for him to do that if the right offer came in. And I think what we were talking about was the separation of business from football. And I think it is early to say whether that's been successful or not. But I think that they've made that division. I think Levy is way further away from the football side than he's ever been. And I think that Scott Munn coming in is a good move. And I think with him overseeing the football side, the re-engineering of the recruitment, and I think you see the activity in the two transfer windows about getting stuff done early and identifying the players that we want and getting them in. I think that is an indication that things are going in the right direction. I think you've still got the jury might not be out, but I think it's still we're under consideration because things are going well at the moment. Let's see what happens when things take a bit of a blip, and let's see what the behaviours are like. But forgive, I don't know I'm not sure that there's that much to forgive for, other than his naivety in terms of getting too involved in the football side, and he should have sorted that out earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, not wanting to be a levy in, levy out thing, but I think that he made mistakes. I mean, I don't think he did make
Massive.
mistakes. Let's be honest. He made a lot of mistakes. He was, as DJ said, I think, far too conservative and risk averse when it came to spending money in the first years. The Saha Nelson debacle of the window, when we could have taken a bit of a risk and pushed on. I mean, the pushing Sissoko on Poch because he scored a hat trick in the game against Newcastle. I mean, these type of things were huge errors. Let's not beat around the bush. But I think if you look at the general overview of his leadership, it's been on an upward curve. And he always said that the stadium was going to be the game changer, and it was going to be the difference, and it was all about getting the revenue up. And it's true, and I think, again, we need to always stop saying, it's been, 20 years of failure on the pitch, because it hasn't. We, as you guys have said, we went from lower mid-table to a regular Champions League team. we made numerous semifinals and finals. It's not like we never competed. It's not like we were, again, bottom half and early cup exits every year.
Yeah.
We were competing on the pitch. We just never managed in the big game to get over the field.
Yeah.
And since we moved into the new stadium, we have spent roughly £650 million net spend.
Yeah.
The new stadium
changer.
is a game changer.
It is a game changer. We make about 6 million a game on that on match day revenue, I think. And let's not forget, right? So, listen, Levy didn't start Kane in the Champions League final, did he? Pochettino started Kane in the Champions League final when he never should have started him in that Champions League final. Yeah, and you know, Levy didn't play Son at left wing back in a big game, did he?
Former goalkeeper.
That was Pochettino again, you know. So there's been some decisions and by players and managers in big games where we haven't gotten over the line, but we've got to the line, but haven't got over it. It's not Levy's fault that we didn't get over the line, but he has made some monumental cock-ups in terms of signings. This mentality that he has to win in every deal at all costs, I think, has been detrimental to certainly relationships with other clubs in terms of how we do business, etc. as well. So there's lots and lots of stuff that he got wrong, but I think there's also some stuff that he's got right. And do you know what? Those two things can exist in the same universe. It's okay. You can say that he cocked up on the football side, but has done really well on the business side. I'm hoping that the football side is being sorted out now. So another long-winded way of saying, yeah.
I think that the answer is that I think that the short answer for this is the hurt hasn't necessarily been entirely his fault, though it's a lot easier to place the blame entirely on him. However, that being said, he has made mistakes, but I think it is important to note that he has moved to rectify them mostly by moving away from the footballing side, as it seems has happened with the restructuring of our recruitment team.
Yeah.
So
the one last comment.
Ish.
The one thing I will always struggle with is forgiving him for Mourinho. I hated the idea of Mourinho from the beginning.
That was definitely one of the things where, I mean, I can understand his viewpoint, but yeah, it definitely was not, definitely put the club on the wrong track long term. And the less we talk about Mourinho, honestly, the better. So we are going to go on to our next question from Richard, who asks, how many Spurs fans wet the bed during the Dragusin saga?
Yeah. But it was nothing to do with the saga. I'm at that age now that if I don't get out of bed quick enough, I do tend to have a bit of a leakage. So that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, because all of the news for Dragusin always came out in like the morning in the UK, which was not super convenient for me because that's like 2, 3 in the morning. So it's like every night I'm about to go to bed and I check my phone before I go to bed, and then I get a tweet and it's like, Bayern have upped their bid for Dragusin. Bayern have accepted, or Genoa have accepted the Bayern's bid. It's up to the player, and at that point you're just like, Bayern or Tottenham. Bayern's probably paying more. Bayern's going to win trophies. Tottenham Hotspur. There's only one way this is going to go. And then, of course, the night the transfer, well, I guess the morning for you guys, but the night the transfer happened, I was once again about to go to bed, and then all of the like, I guess the big ITKs, I don't know, football journalists, namely Romano, like DiMarzio, I don't know how reliable he is, but and then obviously Plettenberg, all came out and were saying that he chose Tottenham, and Plettenberg, all of his tweets had a sort of incredulous air to them, which I very much enjoyed. So yeah, that one also, I wouldn't say that I was wetting the bed, but I definitely had a couple of nights that I did not get as much sleep as I potentially would have otherwise, because news broke at inopportune times for me.
Yeah, I have to say, as I said earlier in the pod, that I hated the agent because I always thought he was talking too much, and it worried me from day one because I thought if it's a done deal and he's still talking, that means it's not a done deal. And in my head was Bayern let us do all the negotiating, agents kept them in the loop, and if they've come in for the bid at the last minute, it's because they know that Dragusin will go to them if they offer. So I thought I wasn't particularly upset with the club because I thought that's exactly the same thing that happened with Louise, with when we got Kulusevski. I was like, we've done it to Danjuma, for example. He was supposed to sign for Bournemouth. We swooped in and took him. I was like, that's just the way it works. Bayern's a bigger club. Shit happens. So then to see that, he chose us, and I'm still shocked. And, I think it's a good segue because it meant that they were making fun of us saying, we made you think we were interested in Dyer to steal your number one target. When in the end, we took their number one target and we sent them our unwanted centre back.
Yeah.
Who,
And I wonder if they've actually pulled their pants back up yet, because we pulled them right down.
Exactly.
Yes, that is a good segue to talking. We've spent way too much time talking, but I do want to say a quick goodbye to Eric Dyer. You were definitely one of the football players in Tottenham Hotspur history. You had some good moments, you had some bad moments, you had some memorable moments, and overall, wonderful servant to the club. Understood what it was to wear the colors, and I will remember him mostly fondly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you look at the top and tail of his time with us, the West Ham goal on his debut, and then that video that he posted, which seemed really heartfelt, really genuine. I think, like you said, there's ups and downs in every player's life. At a club, he's there for 9.5 years. He talks about it's going to be really weird not wearing the shirt, and it's getting really weird. It was really weird leaving the ground for the last time, the training ground, etc. So Spurs meant a lot to him, and fair play. And he gave us some wonderful times. He gave us some frustrating times. But at the end of the day, he's been a great servant for the club, and he signed off with a bit of class. So, yeah, nice one, Eric. Thanks for the time.
Yes, our long-term servants leaving this year have signed off. Well, this window, not this year, I guess, have signed off with a bit of class that I wish had been seen from other players who've spent a long time with us.
Yeah, I think Dyer, he just showed again that he isn't your typical, probably because he grew up abroad, but he's not your typical English footballer. He's clever. He's articulate, and he seems like someone I think we're going to miss in the changing room, because the fact that he was English but could speak Portuguese and Spanish, he was able to move from every clique in the squad and be able to kind of link them all together. And he seemed like a top bloke that everybody liked. You heard Dele in that interview when he spoke about his past, and saying how Dyer was a great friend to him and helpful and all the rest of it. And you think he's a really top bloke. And I hated the last year or so where all Dyer would get, if there was a mistake in defense, even if it wasn't his fault, everyone just blamed Dyer. And I hated that he was leaving on that way. And I think, he deserves a lot of respect. And I wish him all the best at Bayern.
He's gone to a big club, by the way. Yeah. He's got to a massive club. If he's getting game time there, it's another episode in his career, isn't it? So good luck to you, mate. Good luck.
Yes, I will not pretend that I did not question his footballing ability at times, but I do, like I said, he was a great servant to the club, and he should be remembered as such, and not necessarily for the way that his career ended, much like Lloris.
Yeah.
All right, we will go on to our last question, which is actually two questions from Chang. Does Dragusin slot straight into center back alongside Van de Ven against United? To answer that question, I would have said yes until the news came out that Romero wants to start, which, based on the way that Ange reports injuries, leads me to believe that Romero might start. But I think if Romero's fit, I think Romero starts because it's Romero. I think if Romero is not fit, I think yes, Dragusin's going to start over Emerson.
I think from the press conference today, and basically, I read into it that Romero will start. I think he had a training session today. He said we'll see how he pulls it. We'll see how he comes out of that. And I think if he comes out of that training session all right, then I don't see how you don't start him with Van de Ven. And I think that's that comes back to our fully fit starting back four, and then you've got Dragusin on the bench, and maybe you give Romero a run out and see how it goes. If we're doing well, if we've got a bit of a buffer, then maybe Dragusin gets a run out for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think Van de Ven should be fit enough to start because he was in theory okay to go against Burnley. So I'm hoping
Van der Ven, definite starter.
Yeah,
mate.
so I think he definitely starts.
Starter.
Romero, I like the idea that he's rushing back because he's finally got competition.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be good because he's no longer going to be able to walk in and do stupid things, and he might also start thinking a bit more about how he behaves on the pitch.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Although
I think
he's got no yellow cards outstanding now, has he? Because they got wiped out. They're wiped out.
Yeah.
So he could go kicking about for a little while.
Yeah, but again, if he gets suspended again and Dragusin comes in, and the only thing I do think is Dragusin is going to be the fittest of the three.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, Ange might be thinking, I've got two which are not that fit. Do I start the one fit one and then rotate the two?
Maybe.
Not.
Yeah. Honestly, if Ange intoned that Romero is going to start, that makes me more likely to believe that it'll be Dragusin, because Ange seems to always say the opposite of what is about to happen when it comes to injuries. So that will be what I think, and that segues kind of well into the second question, which is dealing more with the starting 11. Do we think that Richarlison will keep his space in the starting 11, or do we think that Werner will come in, or do we think that we'll both play for United specifically? And then I guess we can do that we can segue that into our full United prediction. And then we can do game scores, because I don't know how much there is to talk about United. We get it shoved down our throats every single day from every news outlet that covers the sport. So I don't see the need to talk about it here, really. I will go ahead though, and I will name a couple of things that we aren't going to be in contention about, I don't think. So we just don't even have to worry about those. Obviously, goalie Vicario is going to start. Obviously, Porro is going to start. Udogi's going to start. Bentancur is going to start. Kulusevski's going to start somewhere. And Brennan Johnson, I think, is pretty nailed on to start somewhere. So for the rest of them, what are you guys thinking?
I'm going to go with Romero and Van der Ven at the back. I think they start. I mean,
I would agree with that.
I think Van der Ven is nailed on. I think
yes.
Yeah, the Romero and Dragusin is the question there. I think Kulu starts in the 10, Johnson on the right, Richie in the middle, Werner on the left. I think that's how he's going to set it up, because I think because Gio's injured, right?
Yep.
They don't know what the injury is at the moment from what they were saying, but he's got to have more tests on Monday. Maddison's still out. Sarr's away. Biss is away. So I think it'll be Bentancur, Kulu, and Skip.
Yeah, probably.
I think Skip for the energy in the middle of the park. I think you can flip a coin with Skip and Pierre, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think it'll be Skip based on prior knowledge.
Yeah.
Also, because I think Højbjerg is a good calming presence to end the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
look at that. We're all in agreement here.
Yeah.
Hell.
I mean, let's be honest. The front three, there's no one else.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's Dragusin or Romero, and then it's Pierre or Skip. I mean,
Yep. So I think so I guess we'll end this off with score predictions. I will go ahead and I will say it'll be 2-1. I think that we will score twice, and I think they will score in like the 87th minute to make it interesting, but we will hold on and we will come out with a win. It's obviously hard. I think in the past it would have been hard to predict a win at Old Trafford. And obviously this isn't our our best 11. So it's not like I'm going in there super confident or anything, because we are missing a lot of our better players. But I think that our squad depth is such that we can kind of handle that at this point. And I'm tentatively looking forward to the game. What about you, Sai?
See, I think that we're actually getting back to some sort of strength here into our starting 11 now. I feel more confident about this 11 than I have done for weeks, and I think Werner coming in will make a big difference against United as well. They're going to have to come out against us, and that's going to leave space for Johnson and Werner. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say I think we're going to get a fairly comfortable win here. I don't think Man United are all that. I think they're. This is what's going to get shoved down my throat in the pub on Sunday night, because I know that Jimmy, my mate in the pub's going to be watching this and he's going to be listening to it. So I think 3-1, and I think it's going to be a comfortable 3-1 for us. And I think the two wingers are going to tear their defence to pieces.
I think it's not going to be that easy because with United, I think they're a poor team who've had a lot of injuries, but somehow, whenever they seem to be on the brink of things going completely wrong with Farrington Hag, they get a good result. Who would have thought they'd have beaten Villa? I mean, really, after the poor results, exactly, me either.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're going to get with them, and at the end of the day, it is Man U. We never seem to do well up there against them. That said, I think we are going to have a fantastic defense at last. We're not going to have fullbacks playing centre back. Vicario is God, as you know. So we're not going to concede. They do have some players coming back. We're not sure who, but of the players coming back, I don't think any of them really scare us that much. I think we're going to get a Johnson to Ritchie special for the first goal. And then I think we're going to struggle. We're going to have, all hands on deck. We're going to have Pierre come on as a sub, goal line save, and then we're going to have a break counter in injury time, and Werner's going to score on debut for a 2-0 win.
Yeah, I'm just going on the fact that they've lost 3-0 at home 3 times this season.
Yeah. I can't imagine that the ground will be super favorable to them either. Especially, I know you guys remember the ground under Conte at the end. It was a funeral.
Yeah.
And they kind of seem to be not necessarily in the exact same position, but pretty similar, all things considered. At least there won't be any green and yellow this time.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want the quiz answer?
No.
Yes. I do.
No, but before you give the quiz answer, I want to give Johnny's prediction because he sent it to us in the group. So he predicted 4-1 Spurs, Porro, Bentancur.
4-1.
Yep. So Porro, Bentancur, Ritchie doubleheader, and Werner won the strike. So he's gone for also Werner on debut for a 4-1 win.
I would love that. All right, let's hear that trivia answer.
So we are going way back, and it is one Lewis Holtby.
Oh my goodness!
Wow, it's been that long.
It's been that long since Spurs signed a player in January and fielded him in the same month.
Wow. If that doesn't go to show you how much we've changed, I don't know what will.
There we go.
So we will end, as always, with an up the Spurs and roll on Man United, I guess.
Yeah, come on you Spurs!
Yeah, on you Spurs.
Come on you Spurs.